Welcome to Using Interfaces in the Goldilocks Zone. Hey, I'm Eric, and under the What's New in BC25 video was a lot of questions about interfaces. Not really about the new stuff that's in version 25 for interface, but just more of how about interfaces in general. There's a lot of different messaging going on out in the channel about interfaces. Lots of noise going from this is the best thing since ever and every single thing inside Business Central should be an interface to I've never used interfaces. There's no reason to use them, and I don't think either of those messages are correct. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, in the Goldilocks zone. So in this video, I will give you two examples of how I use interfaces, where I have used them, and talk a bit about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And I think we need to, I want to use my this thing again. Let's talk about how the different segments of AL developers and the different segments of AL code. So when I look at the world of AL, I see three distinct groups of consumers of AL. The first one, well, to no one's surprise, that's probably an S. Let's see if we can make that nicer. We can do Microsoft instead. Right. Microsoft. They write a lot of AL code, and we all consume that code in different ways. That's for sure a distinct group. And I'm not drawing these boxes to scale of anything. The next group is app source, which include myself. We have developers who develop apps that are go on to app source. And then the last one, let's see if we can go, wow, let's see if I can be clever. That usually fails. Anyway, I'm really trying to draw around the box with myself in it. Well, let's call them PTEs. So what is different for these three groups? Well, for one of the from this topic, at least one of the most important part is that there are different rules. If we go to the which is actually over there, that one, the PTE group, there are basically no rules. So when you write a PTE, you can change anything in the PTE. You can just, worst case, you can force deploy, and no, you can always get a PTE up and running. So there aren't really any rules in PTEs. In an app source app, we have a bunch of rules. Microsoft will not allow us to make breaking changes to an app source app. Then we cannot install an update to app source if there's a breaking change. When it comes to Microsoft themselves, they sort of have the same rule as app source, but then again they don't. Right? Every time we get a new version of Business Central, they have broken something, and I'm sure that before they break anything, there's multiple meetings in Copenhagen discussing whether it's a good idea to break this thing or not, and then they weigh the pros and cons and come to the conclusion that in order to do what they want to do, they gotta break something. But what does break actually mean? Well, when you change something, what you break is, you don't break your own app because your app is still fully working, but you might break someone who has a dependency on it. And if you look at these three boxes, there's very different rules about dependencies. I'm not going to, let's say 9 out of 10 PTs, and I think that's too low. 99 out of 100 PTs do not have a dependency to them that is not within the control of whoever creates the PT. Meaning that if I create a PT for a customer, it's very, very rare that somebody else is also creating a PT for the same customer with a dependency on mine, and that somebody is not someone who I communicate with. So most PTs doesn't really have a dependency issue. Lots of PTs have tons of dependencies, but they're all from the same vendor anyway, from the same set of developers, probably sitting in the same repo of some sort. So you can break dependencies all you want, because then you just fix the dependencies and upload that. So in the world of PTs, dependencies and breaking stuff is rarely an issue. When it comes to app source, then it's way different, because if somebody takes my SharePoint connector app and build a lot of stuff around it, which at this point in time a lot of people are building document solutions of all sort, then they expect me to honor their things, meaning that I cannot change the SharePoint connectors to stop working with their modifications to it. And we all have the same expectation towards the Microsoft box, right? So if somebody makes a dependency to Microsoft, they create a PT, you really want that PT to work after a Microsoft update. And with the app source, the same thing, right? We really expect that whatever changes we made, that will still should still work after an update. So where am I going with all this? I'm going with the idea that somehow in the first two cases, we could have a need for a contract, and this is one of the things that a interface will give you. So what is an interface actually? And maybe I should go to this one. Here's an interface. This is from one of my apps. This is from the SharePoint connector. This is from the SharePoint connector. We have a module inside the SharePoint connector where you can define incoming documents. And incoming documents can come from different sources. So I have defined the source as an interface. And in this case, it's not really complicated. A source can have 4 functions. A refresh function means that, hey, make sure that the source knows whatever is in this. So think about the source as a queue where files are coming in. So refresh source will go and look for files in that location. And then we can ask for so that there's a table elsewhere that has a definition of what's in the source. So that table gets updated by this one. Then we can get the document stream from whatever is in the source, and we can delete a file. So let's say it's sitting out somewhere on a server or service or whatever. Then you can go delete it, and we can also say view that file. So it's it's a very, very, very simple thing. But if somebody say, okay, I want to get files in from this queuing system into SharePoint, the only thing you have to do is implement these 4 functions, add to an interface, and that will then be an option inside the SharePoint connector. So this is the contract I have made, saying that if you implement these 4 functions with these parameters and so on, then you can feed documents into SharePoint connector. And I have promised not to change this. Behind the scene, I have implemented, if I go and look at this, find all references for this one. Here's an implementation of getting documents in through an API endpoint. So this could be from Power Automate or stuff like that, feeding documents into Business Central that way. You can see that refresh doesn't really do anything in this case because they are fed in automatically from the API. So there's no refresh needed. And then there's some implementation, fairly easy, and that's it for this one. That is the contract. And I create this and I promise this. Behind the scene, then I can just, depending on whatever queue people have selected, I have there's an enum connected to this, so I created an instance of the interface based on the value of the enum, and then it works just like a code unit. So we could do all this just for the code unit, but the code wouldn't be as clean as it is. So I think this is a good example. I have a couple of other ones. A criteria, so you can define how to match a document, and that's also an interface. So we can add in new criteria and just have to implement the match function for that. I think I got another one here somewhere. This is another app of mine, the Cloud Replicator, that replicates data from Business Central to different cloud databases. And we can see that it has a connect and a check table, add table, insert, delete table, and delete record. So insert in this case is actually an upsert, so either update or insert. And we can see that there's an Azure table that implements it, there's some Cosmos that implements it, and I'm working on some AWS stuff and so on, which will just be another implementation of this. So those cases makes a lot of sense to use an interface because this is stuff that sits on app source. This is stuff where I commit to you that there's a contract. There is a well-defined way of doing this. If you look at the system application app, then there's a pattern there where you have something is a code unit, there's a public, and then there's a private code unit that implements the thing. That's kind of an old version of this. Lots of those could be done with interfaces also. So you could, in reality, create your own email implementation. I think there's a few. I should have checked that. Let me actually check that. Hang on, uno secondo while I click on something. And I totally should have checked before we start. And what I want to check is how many interfaces in BC25. So if I look at this is base application BC25. Here's another fun thing for you. If you notice the source code I showed before, an interface is an object, one of those objects without a number. So it's. I know that there are forces inside Microsoft that really want to get rid of the numbers, and that's not going to happen anytime soon because there's so much is reliant on those numbers. But it's funny that we have some objects with numbers and some objects without numbers. And I think that's my dog, if you can hear it, telling somebody that Amazon is probably on the way. But yeah, interfaces are one of those objects without number. Anyway, we can see here, Andres doesn't really, he just shows an internal ID of the interface. See, there's some in BC25. If we go look at system application, there's also some like email, secret provider. There's a few, and it makes sense. It truly makes sense if we are. That's not the one I want. This is the one I want. When we're working in the Microsoft box or we're working in the app source box, it might make sense in some PT situations, but in most cases you're just adding an extra layer of abstraction, and if nobody is dependent on it other than yourself, you might not get that much out of it. So to answer the question I got asked a bunch of time, when should you use an interface? My first reaction is there are two cases. You should use an interface in case where, like in the example for my apps, where you're doing the same thing to different things. So you define the interface of the same thing and then you implement it for the different things. Yeah. That is a very valid case. That's where it makes a lot of sense. The other part is that it is a contract towards someone saying, hey, if you implement this interface, you are in compliance with my app. So even though I might in the app only have one thing, so this is the contract, and I just implemented this once. You say that's a waste of time, but if you do that and you do it the right way, then somebody else could come along, take a dependency in your app and say, I can switch out your thing with my thing. Again, I think this is mostly something that in the Goldilocks zone is probably for app source apps, because it's just too much hassle, and you're putting constraint on yourself in a PT world where nobody would ever have a dependency on your app. If something's going to happen, then you're going to deal with it anyway. So if something needs to change, you don't necessarily switch out the whole thing and write a carbon copy of it. You add a setup field and you change those two things that are different. Anyway, that was a lot of words. I'm all. Let me. What do you think? Are you using interfaces now? What do you use them for? I want to know in the comments below. And when you have done doing that, check out this video. There's some ale hacking going on in here. I'll see you there. Take care. Bye.